Just a bit of a weird time, and not knowing when it's all going to end is probably the hardest bit. If we had an idea, and I understand why we haven't, but if we had an idea of when it was going to end, then I think it'd be a lot easier. As it stands at the moment, looks like we are talking at least weeks. Well, I think we've all started.
We can pause there straight away. At least weeks was a slight understatement. Quick look, I think it was about 3 months for lockdown 1 in the end. But obviously, depending on where you've been in the country, Scotland, England, Wales, Northern Ireland having different things. And also we had the tiered system, which was obviously the big thing in the second half of last year. England being 100% having to effectively close the business did actually end in June. So obviously we had sort of lockdown 2. The second half of last year, as we all know, was just possibly the busiest I've ever known it in the industry. And this year, outside of Scotland, although we haven't been able to open the showrooms, we've been able to keep sort of working and doing installations. And I think any business that didn't have a good lot of installations booked for the first sort of quarter or half of this year, what didn't take advantage of second half of last year's good period. So I think it's all kept us going. We've all been working, but not obviously selling new jobs. But let's keep our fingers crossed that happens again.
Well, I think we've all started to have to embrace exactly what we're doing now. The potential for working from home is massive. When we think about it, 90+% of meetings we have don't actually need to be there in person. Now, this is we're still getting used to this, but there are generations like my kids that something like this would just become completely natural.
I was saying now, I was talking about meetings. I wasn't necessarily talking about client meetings, but that would be part of it. But I was also thinking about meetings with reps and with suppliers. If a rep needs to come in and has got some samples to show you or something like that, that's fine. But if it's just a touch base type conversation, then that really could be done via this method of everything. I think the big thing that's going to be a permanent fixture now is this remote working. Now, whether people are going to be working, from home full time, unlikely, but there's this thing about hybrid working now where you go into the office 2 or 3 days a week and then 2 or 3 days at home. Now, obviously, when we've got showrooms to staff, then that's not quite so easy because you still need to have people in there. Many businesses in our industry run a sort of lead taker process where they don't necessarily have designers in the showroom. And also, I noticed quite a lot of companies are not looking to open fully up again. I think they've quite enjoyed having the appointment-only system. It gets rid of the tire kickers. It means you can organise your day. You're not halfway through something and suddenly somebody walks in and you've got to go and spend 2 hours with them and then you've got to go back. It actually makes it easier to manage a business. Obviously, you're going to lose some business doing it that way, but you won't lose the quality business. And it looks likely that a lot more people are going to be working from home a lot more. This could slightly reverse the open plan living. It's been automatic that, let's say downstairs, people are taking out the wall between the dining room and the kitchen and making a kitchen diner. Now that will be the case and continue to be the case because it's a lovely way to live. But if you are likely to be working home from long periods for possibly the rest of your career, are people going to start looking to have an office at home? Small spaces are quiet, that are walled. Feel there hasn't been the thrust for clients to want the full remote design service. Now, I think there's a couple of reasons behind that, one of which the lockdown has created a hibernation mentality. Everyone sort of hunkered down and just hasn't produced the numbers of inquiries for remote design I expected. But there's another thing as well, is that of the generations that have been affected financially by this, younger people have been affected the most. Middle-aged people have been somewhere in the middle. Some have been still getting full pay, some have been on furlough, some have had nothing if self-employed or very little. But the generation that has been affected the least financially by this has been retirees, because their pension continues. So it's likely to embrace a very new format of buying and selling. Yeah, I think there will be a future for remote working and remote design. This has been the kickstart that is probably needed, but it will build slowly. Oh, and as I did say, it has to be in the portfolio of your services.
So if you think about the cost savings that could be made, both from a personal perspective in terms of time journeying, vehicles, fuel, traffic, and environmental effects, CO2 emissions and cleaner air, that I would hope that out of the back end of this, we could consider whether each time when we need to meet somebody, do we actually need to go to them in person? Can we pick the phone up, which we've always been able to do, or will we be able to have a meeting like this, which is somewhere in between? I think a one-to-one actual physical meeting is very difficult to beat. But plenty of meetings can be had like this, where you can wave your hands around a little bit and show expressions where you're happy or sad, or I'm not too sure about that, which isn't, quite so easy on a telephone. 50% of meetings that we do at least could be done via this method, and now we've all got the software.
As I've already said, I think I would say meetings with suppliers, this would be a good format for a lot. Already said, I think it needs to be part of what you offer.
We're getting a bit more familiar with it. That will probably be the biggest change, I would say, to the industry. Magnet have started an online service where a designer can be sitting at home and they will screen share and speak to their clients. So not sure, once this all settles down, whether it will be a massive part of the market, but it will be a part of the market, and I think it will need to be in everyone's portfolio. We'll always get through it. It's just a question of finances, really. And the government, to be fair to them, have done a lot of good work. The furlough scheme, the business interruption loans, deferring the VAT.
Yeah, well, a year ago, who would have thought that the furlough scheme would still be pretty much running full tilt? Extraordinary. Think of the number of closures in our industry. I barely can think of any, to be honest. Whereas that time a year ago, we were staring down the barrel of a gun, really, and everyone was wondering whether they were going to have a business to go back to, and pretty much everybody has done. What will happen once all of these schemes end will be interesting, because I wonder whether there are a few businesses that have been kept afloat in this way. And once that umbilical cord is cut, then the truth will be out a little bit. So we might see a bit of that. But from what I hear, liquidations and administrations in businesses is very, very low at the moment, much, much lower than normal times. And so that's because every business is being held artificially up. Well, not every business, but many businesses. So once that starts to go, then I think unfortunately, we'll probably see a few businesses close. Been good. It's kept the industry going, and many, many other industries going. So taking politics out of it, the support that the government has given, I think, has been pretty good.
Business rates holidays, and there are lots of grants out there. So most businesses, I would say, should survive this. And I feel sorry for those that are struggling, but there is plenty of help out there. Remember that it will be over. China is coming out the other end now. We'll keep our fingers crossed that we might get a bit of a bounce out the back of this. So 2020 is going to be a crap year, but it won't be as bad as we all think.
So yeah, we did get a bit of a bounce out of it. The second half of last year, more than a bit of a bounce. From what I sort of feel, and what I can see and have experienced myself, is that overall turnover for the year just was all heavily loaded in the second half of the year, but would have been there or thereabouts what you would expect a normal year to be for that. And I would assume that we'll see the same thing again. I don't see any reason why not. I see and hear already started.